Okay, and welcome back, students that are taking Math for Business and Finance and Math Applications, Chapter 8, Payroll, and we were discussing federal withholding tax. And just as an FYI, I'm not going over detailed examples. I'm only covering the theory. When we're doing the drill problems and the word problems, we'll get a lot more hands-on application of how to do the federal withholding tax or any of the deductions for that matter. So even though I'm explaining, like in the last video, the bracket method and showing how it works, we'll get more practice when we're doing the applications. And now that we're doing the percentage method, this actually requires calculations. So I'm going to, like I said, just explain the theory, but we'll get into the actual doing when we're doing the drill and word problems. Okay, so with federal withholding, I had said there was the bracket method, which was relatively easy because all you're doing is just looking up numbers on a chart. But it's only efficient when you have very few employees. If you have a computer program, and you're just going to, only have like say 2 or 3 employees, it's a lot easier just to flip open the circular E and look at the table and decide how much that amount's going to be. But if you start getting into say 10, 15, 20 employees and you have the software on your computer, it's better to use the software on the computer, and it's using the percentage method. Okay, for you to do the math for 10, 15 employees using the percentage method, it's just too time consuming. If you only have 2 or 3 employees, again, doing it by hand is a little bit more time consuming, and that's why they end up using the bracket method when you have fewer employees. But when you have a computer to do the math for you, it's all being done by the percentage method. So in your textbook, you see the table for doing the percentage method. Okay, and I'm going to blow this up in a little bit so that we can see the detail of it. But realize that we have to, when we're going to use the percentage method, we have to take into consideration our allowances. The allowances are not shown on the tables for the percentage method. And you'll see what I mean in just a second here when I blow it up. So based upon our previous example where we had, it was married with 2 allowances. Okay. When you're using the percentage method, there's this table that you have to look at in order to take into consideration your allowances. Let's say my gross pay is $800 as a salary. Okay, and I'm married and I have 2 allowances, and let's just use weekly as the payroll period. Okay, well, what we need to do first here is we have to look down and say, okay, what's our payroll period? And we're being paid weekly, so we're going to look at the $73.08. Okay, but that's for 1 withholding allowance. Now I have 2, right? So that means 73.08 times 2 is 146.16, right? That's how much we're going to get for our withholding allowance, which means if I'm being paid a gross pay of $800, I deduct the 146.16 first. Okay, and that ends up being $653.84. Okay, now that's my adjusted gross pay, meaning that's the figure I'm going to use when I go to use the percentage method. Right, so here's the table for the percentage method. Now, you keep the 653.84 in mind, but right now kind of, keep that in the back of your mind, all right? Because I'm going to try to explain how we use the percentage method here. And as you can see, we have weekly, we have bi-weekly, and if I go back up here, then you also see here's semi-monthly, here's monthly. Okay, so they have, again, different formulas for the different time periods as to how you're being paid. But mostly it falls within the most common one is the biweekly one. Okay, and the way this works is, as you can see, and I'm just going to use the weekly because it's on top here. On the left hand side here you have single, and on the right hand side you have married. Okay, so since I'm married and I'm being paid weekly, I'm going to be more concerned with this portion of the chart. Okay, that's where I'm going to get all of my figures from. That's where I'm going to do all of my calculations. Okay, now when you read it, it says if the amount of wages after subtracting withholding allowances is. So you see why when I went back here, here's the amount of my wages. Here's the amount of my wages after I subtracted the withholding allowance. That's where my 653 comes from. So you take your gross pay, then you figure out how many allowances, right? How much for the allowance, which ended up being 146.16, and when I subtracted it, it gave me 653.84. That's going to be, that 653.84 is the number I'm going to be using here, okay? Because it says if the amount of wages after subtracting withholding allowances is not over 156, the amount of income tax to withhold is 0. So in other words, let's say, in that previous, I had used 800, right? Well, let's say I had only been, I had $400, okay? And I'm just going to round numbers here, all right? See, it's 146.16 for 2 allowances. Well, I'm just going to use easier numbers. I'm going to not be concerned with the cents. So let me subtract, oh, let me see, I need that $300, sorry. 3, that's 150, nope. Okay, I'm doing the stuff in my head here, okay? So let's say I was paid $275 for the week, and I have 2 allowances. So I have to take out the 2 allowances first. So then I end up with 9, 2, so I have an adjusted 129, okay? It says here, if the amount of wages after subtracting withholding allowance is not over 156. See, so if I was paid 275 and I take out my allowances of 146, I end up with 129. And if it's not over 156, then the amount of the income tax to withhold is $0. So if I'm doing the books, I would not take any, I'd have 0 taken out for federal withholding. Nothing would be withheld for federal withholding. But that wasn't the case. I had used this scenario of saying, okay, I had $800 and I subtracted 146 and that gave me 653. Okay, so since that's over 156, what I'm going to do is, notice it says over but not over. So if it's over 490 but not over 1515, okay, so it falls right here in between that range. Okay, I come across and then it says 3340 plus 15% of the excess over the 490. So in other words, this 3340, so immediately I'm going to take out 3340 as federal withholding, because the 3340 is how much is being withheld as the basis for 490, right? The numbers in this column here, right, equate to the numbers in this column over here. Meaning, you see this said not over 156, has 0 taken out. Isn't that what this said here? Okay, so this 3340 is the amount of tax owed on 490. This 187.15 is the amount of tax owed on the 1,515. The 533.40 is the amount that's owed on 2,900. 936.04 is the amount owed on 4,338. And 2020.42 is the amount owed on 7,624. So what you're doing here is you're saying, okay, I'm looking at what my wage is, my new adjusted to 653, and then I have to go down and I'm looking to see where it falls within that range. So if it's over 490, I'm going to subtract the 490, okay, because the tax I'm going to pay on the 490 is this 3340 right here. Okay, that's the tax I'm going to pay on the 490, but I have an excess over 163. Over the 490 is 163. Well, it says it's 15% of that excess over the 490. So I have to take 15% of the 163, which is $24.45. Okay, so that $24.45 is how much I'm paying the tax on the 163. So now I have two amounts here. I have $33.40, right, which was the amount that's being paid. I have $33.40, which is the amount being paid on the 490, and I'm adding $24.45, right, because that's the amount that's being paid on that excess over 163. So when I add those two numbers together, the amount of tax that's I need to withhold for federal withholding is $57.85. Okay, so that would be my federal withholding tax when I do the calculation. Okay? Now, notice that all of these calculations, there's a lot of math involved, and that's why the computer works so much better, because it can just run the formula and spit it out. Okay, all that you end up putting in is the $800 here. Okay, when you input the $800 into the computer, and it already knows that you have two withholdings, it's going to already know to take off 146 and then use the 653 as your basis for the additional federal withholding. Okay, and then it's going to run these formulas. It's going to say, okay, on 490, take 3340, and then add the plus 15% of the excess over 490, okay, which in our case here was 163. Okay. So let me erase all of this and clean it up, and then go over it one more quick time, so that you can see it in a little bit easier operation here. Okay, our paycheck is $800. Right? From that previous slide here, let me erase this. And I'm going to change this up a little bit. Let's say it's only one withholding allowance. No, let's say it's 3. Okay, let's make it 3. So I have to first take into consideration my allowances. I'm being paid weekly, right? So that means I'm going to use 7308 as the basis for my allowances, and I have 3 allowances. So that's 24, that's 9, 1, 219.24. Okay, that is how much I'm going to be allowed as for withholding for my allowances. I'm going to round this to 219. All right, so from the 800, I'm going to subtract the 219. 1 from 9 is 8, from 7 is 5. So I end up with $581 as my adjusted amount. Now I come down here, and I'm still going to stay married. Now let's use single. Yeah, let's use single. I come down here, and it works the same exact way. Okay, see, this is not over 41, so if you have less than $41 of taxable income, you're going to pay 0 in withholding. But we have actually 581 here, so I'm going to look in the over column and see, is it over 209? Yes. Is it over 721? No. So I'm going to use the 209 line right here. Okay, and what it tells me is that I'm going to take $16.80, right, plus 15% on the amount over 209. Remember, the $16.80 is the amount of the tax for the 209. So now I have to figure out the plus 15%. So if I have 581 and I subtract 209, gives me 27. That means $372 is in excess over the 209, right? I take 15% of that. So 372 times 15%, that's an additional $55.80. So I add that to the 1680 and I get $72.80 of federal withholding. Okay, so that's how much would be deducted for federal withholding using the percentage amount. Now, I'm just gonna, before I make this video way too long, just as a comparison, notice that I had said single and single with 3 allowances, and my pay was $800. Let me jump back up here to the bracket. Okay, erase all of this. Okay, $800, right? So it was single, weekly, and I have 3 allowances. I'm going to look in the 3 allowance column. So I come down here and I see the $800 right here. So that's the line, the row I'm going to use. And when I hit the 3 allowance column, notice that's $73. So if I was using the tables, I would have $73 withheld. But when I'm using the percentage method, I have $72.80. It's close, it's not exact, but like I said, close enough for government work is all you need when it comes to federal withholding tax, because at the end of the year, you're going to do a reconciliation, okay? And that'll bring everything back into line. So with that said, I'm going to stop here, and I have just one more video to do, and that will be the employer's responsibility. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.